Oh man, it's been a month since I last talked to you. Well, in this setting, right?
Yeah, in this setting.
Yeah. And we're going to be talking about the economy. We're going to be talking to a great economist who's your friend, Chris. By the way, this
Hmm.
is Chris Tamm. He's a friend of mine. He's just a friend, and I'm a friend of his. And we're just talking. We're having fun.
Agree.
Uh, I'm excited to talk to him because I have some questions about the crash, having some questions about recession, interest rates, real estate, uh, realtors dying out with artificial intelligence. I have some questions because I know he's well versed in a lot of these things. But first, right before he jumps in, where'd you meet this guy? Who is he?
Yes. So Joe Brown with Heresy Financial, he got referred to me years ago when I was starting to run a mortgage company. And when you're thinking about closing a couple 100 million loans a year and having a guarantee for that, um, he got referred to me so I could understand the repo market and the reverse repo market, where big capital institutions are parking their money, getting returns on it, and how those flows behind the economy actually affect a lot of what uh, we actually go through in the economy. So Joe's jumping in now. Kind of want to tell that story to him really quick, but he has a great ability. Joe, we're talking about you for a second. Um, so I've Joe, great to see you. So Tristan Ahumada,
Thank you.
we're good friends, and I was just doing an intro to how I got introduced to you. And I've got a good friend of mine who's an investor, very connected to the capital markets. And I was starting to run a mortgage company. And so when we're starting to close a couple 100 million in loans per year, understanding where the risks are is not necessarily in the interest rate. And so I got pointed to you to understand the repo market, the reverse repo market, and how some of those movements are going to affect the actual capital, either the desire for it, or even we have an insurance company, if those insurance policies are going to be desired as collateral and assets, depending on where those assets are flowing. So when I first got introduced to you, way over my head. Um, but I was talking to Tristan about you is that I have a lot of respect for you and your ability to explain something at 30,000 and at 10 feet in the same sentence and jump around to a lot of different subjects. So I want to say thank you for being here. This is formal introduction of Joe to the audience. We're doing this for the organization, but it's going to be redistributed to both of our networks. And so, Joe, just wanted to say thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks for doing this, man.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. All right. So we've got some questions for you. Obviously, our audience is mainly real estate related, real estate world. And let's go right into this. Is the market going to crash for real estate from what you're seeing right now or not?
Well, I always like to start off the answer to that question by saying, and this is obvious to real estate investors, there's no such thing as the real estate market. There are lots and lots of many very different types of real estate markets. And so if we want to paint with broad brushstrokes, I think the commercial real estate is it's in trouble right now. We'll see to the extent that trouble unfolds, but the big problem that always pops up is when you load up on debt, when interest rates are low, and the debt you are loading up on is adjustable rate debt. And that's commercial real estate. That's what it's been for the last decade. And banks are small and regional banks are going to probably deep trouble as a result of this too, because you have these large loans that are maybe not going to be able to get rolled over because you can't afford to get you can't afford the interest on the new loan to pay off the old loan when that balloon payment comes due. And so you go to the bank and you say, all right, we're either defaulting or you're going to work with us to come up with a new deal. So we'll see how that unfolds. In terms of residential real estate, man, this is probably one of my most controversial views, but I don't really see any significant trouble. It's crazy. Like there's a lot of people. I think it comes down to there are a lot of people who they held their homes if they could through 2008, 2009, and then in like 2012 or 13 they thought another crash was coming, so they sold. Like I know tons of people who like in 2014 and 2015 sold because they said it's another bubble. And
Mm-hmm.
you had a lot of people that were especially younger saying, that they couldn't buy in 2010 or 11 or 12. And then they're, now in their 30s and they've been waiting for a crash this entire time. And they've been paying higher and higher rents every single year. And they're just sitting on the sidelines saying, like, when is the crash going to come? And so that's one. There's a big segment of the population that's still trying to get into home ownership that never did, when you look at relative ages compared to past generations. And then the final piece of this is everybody who did own a home or bought a home in 2020, 2021, 2022 is locked in. They will have to be carried out of those homes in order to walk away from them, because they can't afford to move, because home prices haven't fallen. They've fallen a little bit. They certainly haven't crashed. And that means that if I want to sell my home right now, where I'm paying 3%, and move into another home that is worse than my current home, I have to pay, 50% or 100% more than I'm paying right now. And I can't afford that, because everybody refinanced, everybody got these rock bottom interest rates. And so just as we are seeing home unaffordability at, at the highest levels they've been by some measures ever, that means everybody who owns a home can't afford to sell. And so the thing that you need to get a crash is everybody walking away, everybody selling, everybody liquidating. And we just don't have the demographics for that. We have way too many people that need a place to live compared to the places that there are to live. And those supply and demand dynamics are gonna trump everything. And so, yes, prices are high, but you always have to ask why. And when it comes down to supply and demand, it doesn't just because prices are high doesn't mean it's a bubble.
Well, dude, I love that response. And look, it's no surprise that every real estate agent says there's no crash, but we all agree with you. Okay. I'm just saying.
Yeah. You definitely don't want to just be going by the word of the realtor, because when the realtor says, your agent says, oh, well, it's going to slow down this year, then that's scary. If the agent is saying
that's true. If we're saying something's wrong, dude, something's wrong. That's so funny.
Right.
I love that. Chris, what do you think?
I very much agree. I mean, the supply, if people aren't selling, the people that have to move, the demand's there, and the prices are going to go up, or there's not going to be a lot of flexibility with it. Hope is not a good business plan, is that, and Joe, I'd love to know what you think about this, with where the Feds are right now, that maybe they don't do another raise, maybe it lowers by Q3, Q4, so maybe interest rates come down into the fives. And I mean, that if they drop to the fives from where they are today, there's a little bit of a refinance boom there. Maybe some of the recent ones are willing to sell, but it's still not touching those 2, 3, 4% interest rates. I mean, it would take a lot to get those people out, or enough people coming to market somehow that it's worth for them to move, which I personally don't see happening. Joe, do you think, and again, it's a prediction, which is only as good as, tomorrow, but I don't know, what do you see? Do you have any leaning on Feds and interest rates like Q3, Q4?
It all depends on the inflation readings that come in. And this is kind of something that I've been seeing unfold for the last year and a half, that it's recent enough to the beginning of 2020 where they won't be able to just repeat what they did. So if we get a big economic collapse that everything starts crashing, there's a lot of economic pain, you're not going to see the Fed come in and monetize $3 trillion worth of government debt in the course of a couple of months. It's just not going to happen, because they've got the inflation piece to it now. So over the last 20 years, every time there's a bailout needed, they've been happy to do it because the CPI hasn't moved significantly higher. And, we can have the discussion about whether CPI is accurate or not, but that's what they use. And the CPI is high now, because that's what happens when you print trillions of dollars in a very short amount of time. And because of that, they're not going to be able to repeat that. So we see stock market crash, we see, pandemic 2.0 roll through and government lockdowns. They're not going to come and say, oh yeah, this is going to be totally fine for us to print $3 trillion, because everybody remembers what just happened as a result of the last time they did that. And so, but they'll have to do something, which is why, like, when these banking collapses started, they did do something. They rescued all of the depositors. They made sure none of the depositors lost any of their money. So what I've been saying for a while now is that the next bailout is for them, not for us. It's for the government, not for us. It's for the banks, not for everybody else. It's for maybe the large systemically important corporations, but not for the average individual. Because when they bailed out the individual in 2020 and 2021, supply chain issues, shortages, record-breaking inflation, bubbles, fraud. So you had, like investments in a lot of speculative investments that turned out to be fraud, and a lot of people lost their money, like the FTX and things like that. So they're not going to do that again. So everybody who's waiting for the Fed to bring interest rates down to 1% again, it's going to be waiting a very long time. But we are going to continue to see, in my opinion, negative economic events unfold. They'll try as hard as they can to isolate that bailout to just that thing that's collapsing, instead of just a broad, printing of money. So what that looks like to me is that we probably won't see rates come significantly, crashing down anytime soon, for real estate or for anything like that, anything else. May see it move somewhat down, and like you said, that would help out with some refinancing from some of the recent volume, but it would take a significant move down to bring your monthly payment affordability back in line with everybody right now to stimulate more and more buying and selling. But again, that's just going to drive prices up higher.
Where do you see interest rates for mortgages? And look, this is just, I know it's a guess, but you have an educated guess. Okay. So where do you see mortgage rates being towards the end of the year, if everything kind of unfolds as you're seeing it unfold?
Yeah, by the end of the year, I would not be surprised at all to see them somewhere around 5% to move, maybe even a little bit lower than that, because if you look at, basically, we've got a couple different forces that are causing prices to move up and down, and the inflation is the big thing right now that the Fed is trying to retain their credibility by saying we're going to crush inflation. They print trillions of dollars. The first thing that happens within weeks, asset prices explode. Real estate, crypto, stocks, prices go through the roof. Yeah. It took a year for the CPI to get back to the average of 2.5%. It dropped, it went negative, took a year for it. It was March or April of 2021 before the CPI came back up to 2.5%. CPI measures the inflation of goods and services, not the inflation of assets. And so what we see unfold is called the Cantillon effect, and it's basically money moves throughout the economy in phases when it's printed. So the money's printed, the big money knows that's going to drive up asset prices, so they buy the assets, and that drives the prices up. Well, eventually that new money gets bought and sold, works its way throughout the economy from paycheck to paycheck, from expense to income, and it starts to bid up the price of goods and services. It was about December of 2021, January of 2022 was the top in asset prices across the board. Well, what was also happening at that time? That was the end of the expansion of the money supply. That was when the Fed stopped printing the money. So the asset prices stopped going up the moment the money faucet shut off. Well, inflation of goods and services keeps going past that. Again, there's about a year to a year and a half lag between when the money is printed and by the time it works its way through to the goods and services. And so right now, it's April. So we're sitting on, 15 to 18 months right now. Like, we're in this phase right now where we've done about 15, 18 months since the money printer shut off. And so that would indicate that the general level of prices will flatline very soon here. And so we're seeing banking collapses already. Those are deflationary forces, regardless of the fact that they are bailing out the depositors. That's the net effect of that is still deflationary. And so we're seeing a couple things happen right now that would indicate we're at the end of inflation. We could see the official CPI numbers hit 2%, 1%, even 0%, maybe even dip negative for a month or two very soon here. And if that happens, then the Fed no longer has to worry about raising rates, and they can say we're done raising rates, and then the longer term rates would drop as a result of that, anticipating future cuts.
What happens to the real estate market at that point, right then?
At the point where the Fed stops raising rates?
Yeah.
Well, the real estate market, it does tend to lag a little bit. It's a little bit of a slower moving market. It's not as quickly, the prices don't move as quickly as something like, stocks do or Bitcoin does. But that would probably mark a bottom in the price slide. We have seen a little bit of a price slide in the homes that are selling. We've seen houses that are listed for a long time. They're, slowly cutting their prices. So we probably see on average that just stall out. I don't know if it would be enough of just them stopping raising rates. I don't know if that would be enough of a force to send prices back up. It would depend on the other negative things that are happening and how much the market prices in future cuts from there.
Got it. Chris, anything you want to add that I'm missing in between there?
So mine, I know, Tristan, you and I were talking about the idea of like recession versus inflation interest rates. I mean, I have a question that goes a little bit far out there to kind of some of the topics you and I talk about a lot, Tristan, which is like AI and its effect on real estate and markets. Do you want me to go there now, or do you want to go there in a little bit?
Let's go there because nobody talks about this.
So, Joe, we've been talking about this. We have a business that actually participates in AI conversions. So, in different industries, from healthcare to professional services, mortgage, insurance, real estate, and so we're seeing firsthand what this is doing and what the tools are, far past like ChatGPT. And then Goldman Sachs report of by like 2030, 300 million jobs going away. Those types of things, again, that can be worldwide of a workforce. I mean, there's 1 point some billion that fit into that entire number across the world and the professional world. But what do you see, again, just as what you're interpreting, what you're seeing? We're seeing so many efficiencies in different areas that are changing who we hire, who other people hire. Do you see that playing into the next couple of years here?
Technology. So I've got the long answer and the short answer. Which one do you want?
I want the long answer. Tristan, what do you want?
I want the long answer too, yeah.
Okay. All right. Technology is always, I don't know who said this is not my quote. Technology is always overestimated in the short run and underestimated in the long run. And that tends to play out over and over throughout history, where we just think that the next new thing is going to revolutionize everything within the next 2 years. 2 years comes and goes, and there's a little bit of a pop, and then a little bit of the bubble or the hype dissipates, and then you fast forward 20 years from there, and it's an unrecognizable world. And I think it's most likely going to be the same with AI. In the short run, most of the things that are going to happen are the people who learn how to harness the technology best are going to have outsized returns, and it's not really going to affect mostly everybody else. But after a while, it will start to displace everything that it is just better than. It's typically looked at as a scary thing, and in my opinion, it is only a good thing. And the reason why is because it is no different than any other advancement that the human race has ever had, from the invention of fire to the invention of the internet. Human progress is the discovery of better ways to outsource human labor. So I go back to the very beginning. If we had to gather all of our food and we could only eat raw food, you're spending all your day trying to find leaves and tubers and fruits and berries, and you're eating raw foods, and so you can't digest, you can't get a lot of the nutrients out of them. We discover fire, and then now suddenly, instead of having to warm ourselves from the burning of calories solely, we can warm ourselves from fire. We can get way more nutrients out of our food, so we don't have to spend as much time gathering food. Now we can go spend our time doing something else, like maybe hunting an animal, which has way more nutrient density than the fruit and vegetables do that we used to gather. And now, once we find an animal, now we get to offload some of that labor to using the hide to give us clothes. And now we have extra time available to be more productive, to build a better shelter. And that's all of human history. That's what progress is. And so we get to, the discovery of building steam engines with coal. So we move from the energy goes from biomass to coal. And there's a huge explosion in productivity worldwide, not because it's, yes, if somebody's job relied on gathering firewood and that job is no longer needed anymore because everybody goes to coal and steam engines, that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. That was a wasteful, now we know in retrospect, that was wasting human resources, wasting human labor. And so it frees up human capacity to be directed at more productive things. So we offload human labor to animals, to farm our lands, and to tractors to take the job of 100 people in one tractor. And all of that, the only thing that does is it makes more wealth. At the end of the day, that's what it boils down to, is the total stock of wealth grows as a result. We have more food, more abundance, more luxury, more entertainment, more shelter, more of the stuff that we want and need. The wealth grows. And you might say, okay, well, that's disproportionately allocated and the rich have, greater access to some of that. And it's like, well, yes, maybe, but also you have to account for the fact that the cost of it goes down. And so when you have the total stock of wealth growing at a faster pace than the money supply grows, then that means by definition the cost measured in money goes down for those things. Like, for instance, today diamonds are expensive. Maybe diamonds are a bad example. Let's use cell phones. Your average new iPhone is $1,000.
Yeah.
And if just by some crazy invention we could press a button and we could clone iPhones and duplicate iPhones, and these iPhone duplicators were made available to everybody, and everybody could take their iPhone, put it in the machine, press the button, and it'd spit out 10 identical phones. Well, the total stock of iPhones would grow extremely quickly. And that would mean the cost to acquire an iPhone would go to basically zero. And so when the cost to produce something like food or shelter or anything like that, luxury, entertainment, goes down as a result of human efficiency and productivity growing, that means the cost to get that thing goes down. So when you track that throughout human history, the stuff that people want and need, the cost of it goes down when you measure it in terms of human labor. That's why in America today, all of the homeless people are fat. Like, you go back 300 years and the only fat people in the world were kings and the dictators. You couldn't get fat if you weren't the richest person in the world. And now the poorest people in at least the United States look like the richest people back then. There's obviously health problems and stuff, so that all analogies break down at some point. But the point is that we have access to a lifestyle and to the wants and the needs, given how much human labor and time it costs us to get that even 100 years ago people didn't have. The running water, hot water, the electricity, the lights, the Uber Eats, and the Spotify to play your music, and all of the luxuries and the necessities of life. And so that's a long way to answer that. Technology and innovation and progress, basically what that is deflation. It's wealth gets cheaper over time. And artificial intelligence is just the way to do that. It is offloading human labor for that we shouldn't need to be doing to machines that can do it for us, so that we focus on doing something that is even more productive. And that will result in more wealth for the entire world, not less. And when we look at the types of jobs that it's replacing, it's like, yeah, if you could give those people an option, they wouldn't want to be doing that most of the time. Most people wouldn't want to be doing those things for their career. They do it because they can make money enough to provide for their family. But a lot of these jobs are just like, that has to get done and I can do it, so I'm going to do it. But if money was an object, I would focus my time on doing something else instead. And so it's a lot of blue collar stuff. It's a lot of head stuff. It's lawyers. It's a lot of stuff that requires logic and analyzing large amounts of data and boiling it down to something that's more simple. And in tests, this was even 5 years ago, computers were able to figure out health issues better than doctors could, when given all the list of symptoms, all the potential outcomes, made less errors in diagnosing illnesses. Same with judges coming up with the proper, guilty or not guilty, and lawyers scanning through all the legal documents, trying to find, loopholes, or trying to figure out the best way to phrase things so that, the desired outcome would happen. So all of these things, computers can or will eventually be able to do better. And that's a good thing, because that means humans don't have to do that anymore. We can do something else instead.
All right. I love that answer. Thank you. That was a great long answer. Thank you for that. Because it gives us good perspective on it. Which brought up a great question by Joe. And this is not the greater population, but what about, he says, Joe says, how will those people who work at Walmart right now thrive rather than just survive in this massive quicker shift?
Yeah. Okay. So this is something I don't have the chart in front of me, but they've actually broken down now. And over the last, I want to say 5 years, we've seen the emergence of, maybe not the highest tech AI that we have right now, but we've seen the emergence of computers and close to AI machines taking over jobs already. And when you break it down by like low paying jobs versus high paying jobs, it's the high paying jobs that are going away. It's not the hard physical labor.
These are the two websites that social media creators don't want you to.
Yeah, that was our team playing that in the background. Sorry, Joe.
I thought for a second I was hearing
I was looking for it too. I was like, what happened? What am I looking? Yeah.
But so it is the higher paying jobs that are going away. When you think about it, it makes, because it's like a computer's not going to replace the person who is, actually doing physical labor. The people that are running things that need like actual physical touching. So like a bricklayer or a plumber, or somebody who, like construction workers, or anything that requires actual physical interaction with the world. At some point that might be replaced by a robot that is powered by AI, but that's not anytime soon. And so for the most part right now, like, we've seen a huge growth in job openings and actually pay increases at the lower end of the job spectrum. And the job losses that we've seen are all at the top, like especially concentrated in like tech right now. There's, we've all heard about all the layoffs with, Amazon and Microsoft and Meta, Facebook, all the big tech companies. Everybody's laying off a ton of people. So that's where the downside is happening right now. And it's actually turning out to be the opposite with the low end of the job spectrum right now.
All right, last question. I know we're over, but I have to ask this. With AI being able to answer a lot of the questions that typically go to a real estate agent as far as contracts and just generalized questions that we can upload to AI when it's like GPT-5 or 6, how many of the realtors that we have now will no longer be here? Do you have an estimate? Have you thought of it?
I think in any job, about 50% of the people are a little worse than incompetent. About 25% of people are making it worse and harder for everybody. They're, have negative results to everybody.
How come I feel that it's a bigger percentage than that?
It could be. And then the last 25%, they're the rock stars, and they're the ones that get all the results for the entire industry, basically. So you got that do nothing, a quarter that makes it worse for everybody, and a quarter that does, all the results. And so what happens when you have disruption is it knocks out the players that are making it worse for everybody, and it knocks out the, basically like the bottom half. And so it what it does then is it concentrates all of the winnings and the rewards to the people who are actually doing a good job. And so, yes, it is painful for those people, but before they were, pushed out, they were actually resulting in a net loss of wealth for society overall than before. So it was an example of misallocation of resources, really. And so yes, there will be a disruption, but if you're the type of person that like does a good job and you have a decent amount of intelligence and you can listen to people and you work hard and you can deliver results, and you have your eye open on, hey, there's tools that are going to help me in the future instead of looking at it as competition trying to replace me, then you'll be on that end of the spectrum that will soak up all that business.
Dude, I agree with you. It actually will enhance the real estate world for realtors because only the better to good ones will remain through this whole process. That's how I see it. I think 50% are going to be cut out over the next, I don't know how many years. But once we reach the point where we don't need to talk to realtors, I can just go to artificial intelligence and they could give me the entry level information as far as contracts, data, offers, challenges. I wouldn't want to talk to one personally, and I'm one, until I get to the point where I need one for specific advice. Interesting. Joe, where do people follow you? Where do people go to find out more about you? I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, my number one place is YouTube. My channel is called Heresy Financial, Heresy. It's an old religious word that means an opinion that is profoundly at odds with what is generally accepted. And so it's Heresy Financial on YouTube. Same on all the socials, but I'm most active on Twitter in terms of social media. So my YouTube channel is the place I usually send people to, Heresy Financial.
Nice, man. I got you here. I'll put it on here. You've got 181. Sorry, I took 20,000 away. 181,000 subscribers. And then I put up a YouTube. Follow him on Twitter. Check him out. Joe, thank you so much. Chris, you rock. Thank you for putting this together. I'd love to do more in the future to get a take on what's happening as it's changing. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Joe, thank you so much. Appreciate you. Love the perspective. And yeah, thank you, Tristan. Great time.
Thanks, guys.